I paid for my brother's college, but at my graduation, he humiliated me. Success isn't for everyone. There are moments in life that mark you forever, moments that divide your existence into before and after. For me, that moment came exactly 3 months ago, when my own brother's words cut through me like knives on what should have been one of the happiest days of my life. My name is Emily, I'm 27 years old, and this is the story of how I sacrificed 6 years of my life so my younger brother could fulfill his dreams, only for him to spit in my face when it was finally my turn to shine. It all began when our father got sick. I was 21 and in my sophomore year of college, studying communications. Jason, my brother, had just graduated high school with excellent grades and had been accepted to one of the best law schools in the country. We were a middle-class family. My parents had saved enough for one of us to study without worries, but not for both. When Dad was diagnosed with advanced pancreatic cancer, our whole world collapsed. The savings evaporated quickly between treatments, medications, and medical consultations. Mom had to quit her job to care for him full-time. Suddenly, the question wasn't who would go to college, but how we would survive the next month. One night, as I sat by my father's hospital bed, he took my hand. His fingers were cold and his skin yellowish from jaundice. His eyes, however, maintained that intensity I had always admired. "Emily," he said weakly, "promise me something." "Anything, Dad," I replied, trying to hold back tears. "Jason has to go to college. He has the potential to be someone great, to pull this family forward. Promise me you'll do whatever it takes to make sure he can study." I looked at my father, the man who had worked 12-hour days his entire life to give us the best, and I couldn't refuse. "I promised, Dad." 3 weeks later, my father passed away. The day after the funeral, I made a decision that would change the course of my life. I dropped out of college and got 2 jobs, one as a waitress at a coffee shop in the mornings, and another as a receptionist at a hotel at night. Between the two, I barely had time to sleep, but the money was enough to keep our family afloat and pay for Jason's tuition. My brother had always been the brilliant one, the one who got the best grades without hardly trying, the teacher's favorite, Dad's pride. I, on the other hand, was the hard worker, the one who had to try twice as hard to achieve half as much. But I never felt jealous. On the contrary, I was proud of him and firmly believed he deserved that opportunity. The first few months were the hardest. I remember one night in particular, after an especially exhausting shift at the hotel. It had rained all day and my umbrella had broken on the way to work. I arrived home soaking wet, with aching feet and a headache that threatened to split my skull in two. When I entered, I found Jason in the living room with 3 friends, surrounded by empty beer bottles and pizza boxes. "Emily," he exclaimed when he saw me, "can you bring us more beers from the fridge?" We're celebrating that I got the highest grade on the constitutional law exam. I wanted to scream at him. I wanted to tell him that while he was celebrating, I was killing myself working to pay for those beers, that pizza, those expensive textbooks he had piled up in his room. But instead, I smiled, congratulated him, and went to get the beers. Afterward, I locked myself in my room and cried myself to sleep. Over time, things stabilized a bit. Mom found a part-time job as a caregiver for the elderly, which relieved some financial pressure. I was able to quit the hotel job and start taking some night classes to continue my studies. It was exhausting, but the idea that I could someday finish my degree kept me motivated. Meanwhile, Jason flourished in college. His professors adored him, his classmates respected him, and he even got a girlfriend, Megan, a girl from a good family who studied at the same school. Every time he came home, he brought stories about parties, weekend trips, and plans for the future. I listened with a mixture of pride and envy, wondering what it would be like to live that carefree college life I had sacrificed. There were times when I resented him, like when he asked me for money for a trip to New York with Megan, right when I was saving up to buy a laptop I desperately needed for my classes. Or when he complained about having to eat Mom's home-cooked meals because he was sick of the same thing. Small things that accumulated like drops of water, forming an ocean of resentment that I tried to ignore. But then there were moments that reminded me why I was doing all this. Like when Jason called me excited to tell me he had won a legal debate competition, or when he brought home his first A+, and I saw the pride in Mom's eyes. In those moments, I felt it was all worth it. 4 years later, Jason graduated with honors. I used my last savings to buy him a new suit for the ceremony. I remember watching him walk across the stage, tall and handsome in his cap and gown, and feeling a wave of pride so intense it almost choked me. We had done it. We had kept our promise to Dad. After graduation, Jason got an internship at a prestigious law firm. It didn't pay much, but it was a foot in the door. I was still working as a waitress and studying at night, slowly working toward my own degree. That's when I met Ryan. He came to the coffee shop where I worked every morning, always ordered the same thing, an Americano with oat milk and a croissant, and always left a generous tip. One day he left his number written on a napkin along with the tip. "In case you ever want to have coffee instead of serving it," the note said. Ryan was different from any guy I'd ever met. He was kind, attentive, and most importantly, he listened. I told him about my dad, about the promise, about the sacrifices. He never judged me. Instead, he encouraged me to keep studying, even helped me prepare for some exams. With his support, I was finally able to enroll full-time in college. I was 25, significantly older than most of my classmates, but I was determined to finish what I had started years ago. The next 2 years were a whirlwind of classes, exams, papers, and for the first time in a long time, some fun. Ryan taught me that it was okay to enjoy life, that not everything had to be work and sacrifice. I started going out more, making friends at college, experiencing a bit of that college life I had longed for. Jason, meanwhile, was quickly climbing the career ladder. He went from intern to junior associate in record time. He moved into an apartment in an upscale part of the city with Megan, who is now his fiancée. He came to visit Mom occasionally, always with expensive gifts and stories about important cases he was working on. Our relationship had become more distant, but I attribute it to the fact that we were both busy with our lives. And then came the day of my graduation. After 6 years of hard work, sacrifices, and perseverance, I was finally going to receive my degree in communications. It wasn't law, it wasn't an elite university, but it was my achievement, and I was immensely proud. The morning of the ceremony, I woke up with a mix of nerves and excitement. Ryan had given me a beautiful dress for the occasion, a blue dress that, according to him, made my eyes shine like stars. Mom had prepared a special breakfast and had even baked my favorite cake for the celebration afterward. Jason arrived just as we were about to leave for the university. He came alone. Megan had a family commitment, he explained. I noticed he seemed tense, distant, but I attributed it to some problem at work. The ceremony was beautiful. When they called my name and I went up on stage to receive my diploma, I looked for my family in the audience. Mom was crying silently, a smile of pride lighting up her face. Ryan was applauding enthusiastically, whistling and shouting my name. Jason was looking at his phone, apparently oblivious to the most important moment of my life. After the ceremony, we organized a small celebration at home. Nothing extravagant, just family and some close friends. I had prepared everything carefully, home-cooked food, simple but pretty decorations, a playlist with our favorite songs. I wanted it to be perfect. At first, everything was going well. People were eating, drinking, chatting animatedly. I floated from one group to another, receiving congratulations and good wishes. I felt happy, fulfilled, as if I had finally reached the finish line after an endless race. Then, Jason asked for everyone's attention. He stood up, glass in hand, and began what seemed to be a toast in my honor. I want to propose a toast to my sister, he said, his voice slightly slurred from alcohol, who after, how many years has it been? 6? Finally got her degree. There were some uncomfortable laughs. I felt something wasn't right, but I smiled and raised my glass. Emily has always been the persevering one in the family, he continued. While some of us are born with natural talent, others have to work twice as hard to achieve half as much. And that's admirable, I guess. My smile froze. Had he just implied I was less intelligent than him? Now she has her shiny degree in communications. It's not law, of course, but I guess not all of us can aspire to the same things. Success, after all, isn't for everyone. The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel all eyes on me, some of pity, others of discomfort. Ryan stepped forward, clearly upset, but I stopped him with a gesture. This was my battle. What exactly do you mean, Jason? I asked, my voice surprisingly steady despite the knot in my throat. He shrugged, taking another sip of his drink. I'm just telling the truth. Some of us are destined for great things. Others do what they can. Something broke inside me. 6 years of sacrifices, of sleepless nights, of working until exhaustion. Also, my brother could have the education I had postponed. And now he was there, humiliating me at my own graduation party. Do you know who paid for your education, Jason? I asked, my voice trembling slightly. Do you know who dropped out of college so you could go? Who worked 2 shifts to pay for your tuition, your books, your apartment? I saw the confusion on his face, quickly followed by a mixture of shame and defiance. Mom and Dad died before you started college, I interrupted him. And what little money he left went to paying his medical debts. Mom barely earned enough to keep the house. I paid for your education, Jason, every single cent. The silence grew even deeper. I could see Mom in the corner of the room, pale and with tears in her eyes. I had never told her the whole truth. I didn't want her to feel guilty. I don't believe you, Jason finally said, but his voice lacked conviction. You've always been dramatic, always seeking attention. Attention? My laugh sounded hollow even to my own ears. You think I put my dreams on hold for attention? You think I worked until I collapsed from exhaustion for attention? I promised Dad on his deathbed that I would make sure you finished college. And I kept that promise at the cost of my own life. I took out my phone and searched through my banking app. Then I handed it to him. Look at the payments. Every semester for 4 years, look at the source, my account. Not Mom's, not insurance, not a student loan, my account. Jason looked at the screen, his face losing color with each swipe. Finally, he handed me back the phone without saying a word. I'm not asking you to thank me, I continued, feeling tears starting to roll down my cheeks. I did it because I love Dad and I love you. But don't you dare stand at my graduation on my day and belittle my achievements. Not when those achievements came despite, not thanks to, the sacrifices I made for you. With that, I turned around and went out to the garden. I needed air, I needed space. I needed to process what had just happened. Ryan followed me, but respected my silence, simply sitting beside me and holding my hand. Minutes later, Mom came out too. She sat on the other side and hugged me tightly. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know how much you had sacrificed. I'm so sorry, baby. It's not your fault, Mom, I replied, resting my head on her shoulder like when I was little. I did what I had to do. The party ended shortly after. The guests left one by one, muttering uncomfortable apologies and hasty congratulations. Jason left without saying goodbye, leaving behind a heavy silence and a sense of betrayal that seemed to permeate every corner of the house. That night, lying in my bed with Ryan by my side, I tried to process everything that had happened. How could my own brother, the person for whom I'd sacrificed so much, treat me with such contempt? Had he always been like this and I had been too blind to see it? Or had success and money changed him so much? It's not fair, I murmured in the darkness. I sacrificed so much for him. Ryan hugged me tighter. No, it's not fair, but it says more about him than about you. You're amazing, Emily. What you did for your brother, for your family, that shows who you really are. And nothing he says can change that. His words were a balm, but the wound was still open, bleeding. That night, I barely slept, going over and over the events of the day, wondering if there was something I could have done differently. The next morning, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in a long time. I wasn't going to let Jason's cruel words define my day, my achievement, my life. I had worked too hard to get here. I got up, showered, and dressed carefully. Today was the first day of the rest of my life, and I was going to live it on my own terms. Ryan and I had breakfast together, talking about the future, about possible jobs, about the apartment we were thinking of renting together. It was strange and exciting to think about a future where my decisions weren't dictated by others' needs, but by my own desires and ambitions. We were about to leave when the doorbell rang. When I opened the door, I found myself face to face with Jason. He looked terrible, with deep dark circles and wrinkled clothes as if he had spent the night awake. "Can we talk?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. I looked at Ryan, who nodded and muttered something about waiting for me in the car. I let Jason in and we sat in the living room, the same place where hours before he had humiliated me in front of everyone. There was a long, uncomfortable silence. Finally, Jason spoke. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice broken. "What I said yesterday? I have no excuse. I was drunk. I was jealous. I don't know what I was thinking." "Jealous," I repeated, incredulous. "What could you possibly be jealous of?" Jason sighed deeply. "Of you, of your strength, your determination, of how everyone looked at you yesterday with so much pride and admiration, of how Mom cried with happiness when you received your diploma, of how Ryan looks at you like you're the most amazing person in the world." I was speechless. My brother, the successful lawyer, jealous of me. "You've always been the strong one," he continued, "the one who keeps the family together, the one who sacrifices without complaint. I'm not like that. I'm selfish. I've always been. And yesterday, seeing you succeed despite everything you've been through, despite me, it made me feel small, insignificant." "That doesn't justify what you said," I replied, my voice softer than I expected. "I know," he nodded. "Nothing justifies it. And I'll understand if you never want to speak to me again. But I needed you to know that I'm sorry, and that I'm proud of you. I've always been, even if I haven't known how to show it." I looked at my brother, really looked at him. I saw the boy who used to follow me everywhere, the teenager who asked for help with his homework, the young man who hugged me at Dad's funeral, and I also saw the man he had become, with his flaws and virtues. "It's going to take time," I finally said. "I can't pretend yesterday didn't happen, that it didn't hurt, but you're my brother, and despite everything, I love you." Jason nodded, tears rolling down his cheeks. "I'll make it up to you," he promised. "I don't know how, but I'll find a way." I didn't respond. There was nothing more to say at that moment. We said goodbye with an awkward hug, and I watched him drive away in his car, wondering if our relationship could ever fully recover. Ryan was waiting, patient as always. "Everything okay?" he asked when I got in the car. "I don't know," I answered honestly, "but I think someday it will be." 2 weeks ago, I received a call that would change the course of my life again. It was Megan, Jason's fiancée. We had never been close. In fact, we had barely exchanged more than pleasantries on the few occasions we had met. That's why her call surprised me. "Emily, I need to talk to you," she said, her voice tense. "It's about Jason." My heart skipped a beat. Has something happened to him? Not exactly. Can we meet? I'd prefer to talk in person." We agreed to meet at a coffee shop halfway between our workplaces. All day I couldn't focus on anything else. My mind was manufacturing increasingly catastrophic scenarios. Was Jason sick? Had he lost his job? Had they ended their relationship? When I arrived at the coffee shop, Megan was already there, nervously stirring her coffee at a back table. I had never seen her like this. She had always been the image of perfection. Elegant, composed, self-assured. Today she seemed vulnerable. "Thanks for coming," she said when I sat across from her. I didn't know who else to turn to. "What's going on, Megan? You're scaring me." She took a deep breath. "Jason has problems, serious problems." She told me that my brother had been gambling. Not occasionally, not for fun, but compulsively. It had started shortly after his promotion, when the stress of the new position began to weigh on him. At first, it was small bets, poker games with colleagues. Then he moved on to casinos, online sports betting, anything that would give him that adrenaline rush he needed. "He's lost a lot of money, Emily," Megan said, her voice barely a whisper. "More than he can afford to lose. He's up to his neck in debt." "How much?" I asked, feeling a knot in my stomach. "Almost $50,000. The figure left me breathless. It was an astronomical amount, especially considering that Jason earned good money at his job. "Why are you telling me this?" I asked, though I already sensed the answer. "Because he's about to lose everything. The firm has discovered that he's been embezzling client funds to cover his debts. They've given him an ultimatum: return the money in a week or face criminal charges." I froze. My brother, the brilliant lawyer, the pride of the family, had fallen so low as to steal from his own clients. "And what do you expect me to do?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Megan had the decency to look ashamed. "I know it's a lot to ask, especially after everything you've already done for him. But Jason mentioned that you tore up the check he sent you. That money, it could help cover part of the debt." I felt a mixture of anger, disbelief, and, surprisingly, a hint of pity. "Are you asking me to give money I don't have to save my brother from the consequences of his own actions? After how he treated me?" "I wouldn't ask if there was another option," she replied, tears forming in her eyes. "I've sold my jewelry, I've asked my parents for loans, I've mortgaged the apartment. But it's not enough, and if Jason goes to jail..." She didn't finish the sentence, but she didn't need to. We both knew what it would mean for his career, for his future, for our family. I left the coffee shop with my head spinning. I hadn't given Megan an answer. I needed time to think, to process all this information. I walked aimlessly through the streets, trying to sort out my thoughts. On one hand, I was furious. How dare Jason get himself into such a mess and then expect me to save him? After everything I had already sacrificed for him. After how he had treated me at my graduation. On the other hand, he was my brother. Despite everything, despite his mistakes, his arrogance, his selfishness, he was still my brother. The boy who gave me drawings when we were little. The teenager who defended me when a boy broke my heart in high school. The young man who cried on my shoulder at Dad's funeral. When I got home, Ryan was already there preparing dinner. Such a normal, everyday scene that contrasted brutally with the chaos I felt inside. "Are you okay?" he asked as soon as he saw me. "You look disturbed." I told him everything. Megan's call, Jason's situation, the implicit request for financial help. Ryan listened in silence, his expression changing from surprise to disbelief, and finally to concern. "What are you going to do?" he asked when I finished. I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to tell him to figure it out on his own, to face the consequences of his actions. But another part still wants to protect him, Ryan completed, like you've always done. I nodded, feeling tears roll down my cheeks. Does that make me weak? Stupid? Ryan hugged me tightly. It makes you human, Emily. It makes you the compassionate and generous person I fell in love with. But you also need to think about yourself, about us, about our future. That night, I barely slept. I tossed and turned in bed, mentally reviewing our finances, calculating how much we could afford to lend without compromising our own plans. Ryan and I had been saving for a down payment on a small condo. It wasn't much, but it was our dream, our future. The next morning, I made a decision. I called Megan and asked her to arrange a meeting with Jason that same afternoon after work. Then I called Mom and asked her to come too. It was time for all of us to face the truth. We met at our apartment. Mom arrived first, confused by the sudden summons. Jason and Megan arrived shortly after. My brother looked like a ghost of himself, pale, with dark circles under his eyes, with a lost look of someone who has hit rock bottom. Sit down, I said, my voice firmer than I felt. We need to talk. I told them I knew all about Jason's situation. I watched as my brother shrank in his seat, shame written in every line of his face. I watched as Mom turned pale, bringing a hand to her chest as if it physically hurt her to hear what her son had done. I can't give you $50,000, I finally said, looking directly at Jason. I don't have it. And even if I did, I don't think giving it to you would be the solution. Jason nodded, not daring to look me in the eye. I understand. I didn't expect. I have no right to ask you for anything more. But, I continued, I can offer you something more valuable than money. I can offer you my support. They all looked at me, surprised. Ryan and I have some savings. It's not much, but it could cover part of the debt. The rest, you'll have to find another way. Maybe you can negotiate a payment plan with the firm. Maybe you can reach an agreement that doesn't involve criminal charges. Why would you do that? Jason asked, his voice barely audible. After everything I've done to you. Because you're my brother, I replied simply, and because I believe you deserve a second chance, but with conditions. I explained that if he accepted our help, he would have to commit to seeking treatment for his gambling addiction. He would have to be completely transparent about his finances with Megan and me, and he would have to find a way to repair the damage he had caused, not just financially, but emotionally. It won't be easy, I warned. You'll have to work harder than you've ever worked. You'll have to face your demons, your mistakes, your arrogance. You'll have to learn humility, responsibility, gratitude. Are you willing to do that? Jason looked at me, and for the first time in a long time, I saw my brother. Not the successful lawyer, not the desperate gambler, but the boy who once promised to protect me from the monsters under the bed. Yes, he said, his voice broken but determined. I'm willing to do whatever it takes. That night, after everyone left, Ryan and I talked at length about our decision. It wouldn't be easy. We would have to postpone our own plans, adjust our budget, make sacrifices. But we both felt it was the right thing to do. I'm proud of you, Ryan told me, hugging me in the darkness of our bedroom. Not many people would be capable of forgiving as you have. I don't know if it's forgiveness or madness, I admitted, but I know I couldn't live with myself if I didn't try to help him. The following weeks were a whirlwind of activity. Jason managed to negotiate an agreement with the firm. He would return the embezzled money in installments, resign voluntarily, and not face criminal charges in exchange for his full cooperation. He lost his job, his professional reputation, but saved his freedom and the possibility of a future. He began attending Gamblers Anonymous meetings 3 times a week. At first, he went reluctantly, more out of obligation than conviction. But little by little, he started to open up, to share, to recognize the depth of his problem. Megan decided to stay by his side, despite everything. It's not going to be easy, she told me one day as we had coffee, but I love him. And I believe the Jason I knew, the good and honest man, is still there, under all those layers of pain and addiction. Mom, for her part, became more actively involved in our lives. She came to visit us regularly, cooked for us, supported us emotionally. One day, as we washed the dishes after a family dinner, she suddenly hugged me. I'm so proud of you, she told me, tears in her eyes. Your father would be too. Those words meant more to me than any degree, any professional achievement. Knowing that I had honored my father's memory not only by keeping my promise to take care of Jason, but also by being true to my own values of compassion and forgiveness. Jason found a modest job at a small legal firm. It wasn't glamorous, it didn't pay even half of what he earned before, but it was a start. Each month faithfully, he returned a part of the money we had lent him. It wasn't so much the money that mattered, but the gesture, the commitment, the responsibility. One night, almost 6 months after that meeting in our apartment, Jason asked me to accompany him to one of his Gamblers Anonymous meetings. It was the first time he had invited me to that intimate and vulnerable space. "Today is a special day," he explained. "I'm receiving my 6-month sobriety medal, and I want you to be there." The meeting was a powerful experience. I heard stories from people who had lost everything to gambling: homes, jobs, families. People who had hit rock bottom like Jason, but who had found the strength to get up, to fight, to reclaim their lives day by day. When they called Jason to receive his medal, he stood up, visibly moved. "My name is Jason, and I'm a compulsive gambler," he began, his voice firm despite the emotion. 6 months ago, I was about to lose everything: my job, my freedom, my fiance, my family. I had betrayed the trust of everyone who mattered to me. I had forgotten who I was, who I wanted to be. He paused, his eyes searching for me in the audience. But I was lucky. I had someone who believed in me when I didn't believe in myself. Someone who offered me a second chance I didn't deserve. My sister, Emily. Tears were flowing freely down my cheeks as Jason continued his testimony, talking about his daily struggle against addiction, about moments of weakness, about small victories, talking about gratitude, humility, hope. After the meeting, we walked together under the moonlight. There was a peace between us that I hadn't felt in a long time, perhaps never. "Thank you," Jason said simply, "for not giving up on me." "We're family," I replied, "in good times and bad." Today, a year after my graduation, I look back and barely recognize my life. So many things have changed, so much pain has been processed, so many lessons learned. Ryan and I finally were able to make a down payment on our small condo. It's modest, but it's ours, full of light and possibilities. My job at the advertising agency is going well. I was recently promoted to account coordinator. It's not my dream job, but it gives me satisfaction and stability. Jason continues to fight day by day against his addiction. He's had relapses, moments of weakness, but he always finds the strength to get back on track. Megan and he postponed their wedding. They both agreed they needed time to heal, to rebuild their relationship on more solid foundations. Mom seems younger, lighter, as if a weight has been lifted from her shoulders. "My children are well," she often says. "That's all a mother can ask for." As for me, I'm learning to find a balance, to give without emptying myself, to love without losing myself, to forgive without forgetting. I'm learning that true success isn't measured in degrees or salaries, but in the ability to maintain your humanity in a world that constantly tries to take it away from you. Sometimes on quiet nights when Ryan sleeps beside me and the city falls silent, I think of my father. I wonder if he would be proud of the decisions I've made, of the woman I've become. And in the silence of those moments, I can almost feel his presence, his approval, his love. The path hasn't been easy. There have been tears, screams, sleepless nights, days of doubt. But there has also been laughter, hugs, moments of connection so deep, they seem to transcend time and space. And if you ask me if I would do it all again, if I would sacrifice myself for my brother, forgive him, believe in him when no one else did, my answer would be a resounding yes. Not because I'm a saint or a martyr, but because I've learned that true love, the love that endures, isn't the one that never fails, but the one that always tries one more time. So here I am, Emily, 28 years old, with scars that tell stories of pain and overcoming. I don't know what the future holds for me, what new challenges I'll have to face, but I know I no longer walk alone. I have Ryan, my family, and most importantly, I have myself. And for now, that's more than enough.